Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Pearl. Now, since I reviewed X, I was kind of late about that. I think I reviewed it around the time Pearl actually came out. Since Maxine is coming out, I'm actually going to review Pearl, and I don't know when I'll review Maxine, but hopefully soon. This is, I guess, the second part in the Mia Goth and Ty West stab their way through film history, sort of. It is a prequel to X. It is about the old lady in X, who most of the runtime of X are like, ew, it's so gross that she's old and gross and stuff. And now you get to find out why her mind is gross, I guess, in this movie. And it's kind of a harken back to classic Hollywood, or at least there's sort of memories of classic Hollywood, like Douglas Sirk and Wizard of Oz, and like kind of remind you of a classic Hollywood film, much like how the previous one was sort of a Texas Chainsaw riff. This is kind of them doing like a pastiche or doing various things with classic Hollywood kind of iconography about Pearl's upbringing, sort of like if that is going to be about Texas Chainsaw and the kind of grime of the 70s, this is going to be about the kind of optimism of the previous generation's film knowledge, rather than making a silent film, because this does take place in 1918 and that kind of would have been neat, but whatever. I think these are as much a showcase for Mia Goth as they are for anyone, and that kind of continues it, but it kind of makes you realize how good of an actress Mia Goth is, how good of a horror icon honestly she is. She's probably one of our more interesting horror icon actresses we've had. One that, you know, we'll talk about in the same way we talk about someone like Barbara Steele or someone. She's very like creatively involved. She helped write this with Ty West. And this kind of plays like the story of a demented kind of killer, and sort of like their need for fame and validation, and sort of like why she is the way she is. And I think it sort of, as a prequel to X, plays into what actually happened in the movie X. Despite that this does not contain the husband from X, just her, he only is in it for very briefly, which kind of like brings into question, and probably could have done a better prequel showing both of them, but whatever. And I think this is sort of like the idea of what, much like what happened with Furiosa recently, where it's like, these are all our ideas for the character, oh, let's make that into a movie, which is kind of an interesting idea for a prequel, but this is a lot less interesting than Furiosa. This Pearl is about a young woman in 1918, when there's, at the time, what was called Spanish flu. The First World War is sort of like ending, and Pearl lives on a farm. Her father is paralyzed because of the flu. Her and her very German mother are just trying to make it through on the farm. She wants to be a dancer in the pictures and go on to, like, you know, be in this chorus line that tours, and she like wants to entertain and things like that. She loves going to the movies and escaping from her farm life that she's very much going to get past, although you know that's not going to happen because she's in the same fucking house in X, which takes place 60 years after this. But well, we'll pretend we don't know that. The whole time you see like how she is, and how scary and unhinged and like unpredictable Pearl is as a character, and how you continue to worry because you know what kind of person she is, and dealing with the anticipation and rejection of kind of trying to be famous all is. I do think this sort of plays in both, like, I don't love when people do classic Hollywood in movies, because oftentimes I'm like, do you even know any of classic Hollywood, or are you sort of like, you feel like you know the vibes or whatever, so I have to deal with like how you view film history, which is incredibly inaccurate and kind of shows you don't know anything. I don't think Ty West is like that deep, you know. I come for the stabby stabs, and that's what I got, and that's cool. I think some of it, when it goes into like the big scoring and stuff, actually plays in like a loving way. Like, it doesn't feel like he has many cultural references for classic films within him, but he's playing them very well and in a fun way, so he gets away with it. But again, like, you know, it's 1918. It would have been cool if there's some, you know, we need more like, you know, Eisenstein references in our horror movies. So I don't need Douglas Sirk. Come on, man. But it was cool seeing Douglas Sirk anyway, I guess. This is a showcase, much like X was, and I think these are all showcases for Mia Goth as an actress. Very much like all the scenes everyone talks about, like her auditioning, her big monologue and stuff. She is a really, really good actress with an amazing presence. Like, I never really thought less of her. I think she's actually a really capable, interesting actress, but it kind of shows like what she's able to do with horror in ways that I don't think very few actresses are ever given the chance to, but she raises to the occasion in such a way you very much believe in her. I don't know how she's not considered for more roles. She's really kind of interesting in this, and what she's able to do with this and say about both sexuality and her own loneliness, but also knowing she is dangerous in itself is like, it's a hard thing to play and not go completely over the top and not have empathy with it. And as much as you want to follow this character and hope she succeeds, you're also scared of her, you're also worried, you're not sure what she's going to do, and you kind of don't want to see her get hurt, but at the same time you know she's going to do something fucked up. I like what Ty West does with this. This is like, if you're thinking of like a horror franchise, a lot of them don't do interesting things. They sort of just keep remaking the same thing or do it with like more people or bigger kills, and this is at least an interesting avenue to take. Maybe Maxine, which I haven't seen yet, like it's sort of the same, or like just an 80s slasher or something like that, but at least they're like, this is a weird avenue to take ultimately, and that is actually kind of very interesting. It says a lot, like that they want to do it in this way. I think shows a lot about them as him as a filmmaker, honestly. And it's also interesting to see like everything, you know, that there's a pandemic in this, and at this time, like the pandemic was I was still wearing masks at this time. Kind of the parallels between it are sort of interesting. I am surprised they went so far into the past. I'm curious like what the exact reason for that. It feels like sort of random, but again, like I just don't believe that any of these films are deeply saying anything. They're just like fun and enjoyable, and I think it sort of works for that. Like I'm not disappointed. I'm more like, that's like just like what you'd want from it. It is cool seeing David Cornswet. This is the first thing I ever saw him in, I'm pretty sure. So when I see him in Superman, I can remember I saw him as a pervy projectionist in another movie, so that's neat for me. The other thing when I'm talking about being a spin-off and how interesting that is, I don't often like in horror when I'm explained the killer, because all of the mystery is gone. I prefer not to know. In most of those movies, they're like dwindling quality. Maybe it's sort of interesting. Is it as good as the original? Fuck no, never is. This is like, maybe because X wasn't like that good, but also because I think it does something interesting enough where you're like okay with that. And I don't know if like they understand Pearl as a character. I don't know if it like fully you understand what happened when you get to X. You know, there's still some mystery behind it, but it's at least interesting enough. I don't feel like that mystery's gone. You know, it's far enough away, you feel like something happened. It's not trying to be like a prequel. It explains everything and motivations, while also, I guess, sort of trying to be. I don't think they thought too deep about this, to be totally honest with you. I think it was just like, oh cool, we made, you know, a cool slasher in 1918, and that's what they did ultimately. You know, it's fun seeing them do the old Hollywood stuff. It's fun seeing them mess with this kind of iconography, but I don't think it really is anything. There's no point to any of it. It's just like, let's have it be here. It'll be cool if it's here. We're not saying anything about Hollywood. We're not saying anything about 1918. We're just saying, like, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, we have this here, and it sort of works within its own drama, and Mia Goth does an amazing performance, and you get through it. But neither of these make me think Ty West is like the next horror filmmaker. I just think he's he's a clever enough horror filmmaker to get these gimmicks to work, and maybe in a sense that is a good horror director. But I think this is mainly brought together by Mia Goth and her great performances and his willingness to showcase her as much as he does and like develop this with her. I think does speak highly to him as like maybe more of a producer than a director. But I enjoyed this film. I don't think I had as much fun with X, but I think I like maybe thought about it a little more than X. I don't know. This trilogy, I don't necessarily get it. It just feels like a studio slasher franchise that took like a weird pivot in the middle and then is coming back to the slasher thing there. I sort of like that it did pivot. That's neat. I like seeing like weird, different kind of horror films, and this is definitely like that to a degree. But it didn't feel like it was really doing much differently. It's not shot in different ways. It does sort of do sort of technicolor-y stuff. It does do some stuff that is different, but it's sort of like not enough to justify being in this time period, or, you know, why do a prequel like this? I don't think any of that really makes a lot of sense, but if you don't think about it too much, you know, it's fine. And I think that's sort of like what it is with this. not to like kind of give up on it, but I don't think these are like the horror films of our era. It's more of just like seeing Mia Goth become, you know, the horror princess that she is, and watching Pearl not become the celebrity princess that she wishes to be. It's for a very compelling horror film, and kind of makes you kind of not just think that old lady is gross. You think that old lady is gross, and you pray to God you're not next to her, because you know she's absolutely going to stab you. So if you have seen Pearl and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if